showing that it's he's picking you up now.
Okay.
All right.
So I guess I'll
Yeah.
just start over by saying that I've received a lot of positive feedback on our conversations. I have, first of all, I've been very happy with the stuff we have covered. Trying to understand the game, trying to build good habits, trying to analyze what's important in a scenario, trying to kind of remove ourselves from the end result, but still have that as a motivation to do the small things better and more consistently. And people have been chatting me up, writing on YouTube and stuff like that about, oh, this made me think about the game. This sentence really resonated with me. You guys have great chemistry, all sorts of good feedback. So that is only possible because you suggested that we posted these and not just kept them behind closed doors, as is usually the process, right? So thank you for that.
No, no, I'm glad it worked out. I know, and I honestly didn't know if you would go for it when I first said it, because part of the thing is like I want to, one, I think it's kind of like a service to the community in a way, but also
Yeah,
two, it's just like, I don't know, it's a fun way to share it. It's a good way to, I think, do something. It's something that doesn't exist, and and
yeah,
I've been streaming enough where it's like I don't really let it get to me. Like I don't really care if people think like, oh, this guy sucks. I mean, I do, but I don't. But I do, but I don't. Anyway, uh, the but overall, no, I've been pretty happy. I've been enjoying it a ton. It's been I've definitely been learning a lot. I'm glad we get to share with people too.
yeah. It adds an extra layer to it, and also, yeah, different benefits for the two of us individually as well, right? So it's a
Yeah,
lot of there's a lot of layers to why it's strictly positive, especially if neither of us have anything to hide, so to speak.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
then if we don't have any pride to swallow, and you kind of say to hell with the confidentiality, then for sure, let's go.
Let's do it.
It has also worked as an advertisement for me, so
Yeah.
definitely no complaints and only positive things to say.
Have you gotten any new students from it?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
That's awesome.
I've gotten a couple of players who said, "Oh yeah, I noticed this and that," so it made me move forward with coaching. I've been thinking about it for a while, so
That's
yeah,
cool.
for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Glad it worked out for you too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think today we were going to talk about kind of like deck building and such, right? So we were talking about building a deck A through Z. So for context, for both YouTube and the chat, I've been working on this like Ancient Tomb Saga deck, and I'm pretty happy with it. But one of the things I've noticed with it is that it's really hard to sideboard. Like I put generically good cards in my sideboard that are generically good, but when push comes to shove, and I'm actually like in a game and sideboarding, it's like really hard to take things out. Not necessarily because like I don't know how to sideboard, but because like these cards are also good too. Um,
Yes.
it got me thinking like maybe the sideboard actually just needs to be better. Like it just needs to be. Like, I can't just generically put fork. I mean, fork can sign whatever, but like other stuff in there. Like what's my graveyard suite, right? Like I have two Grafdigger's Cage in there, and I have a
Mm-hmm.
Soul Guide Lantern. I think I have a Containment Priest. So like against Oops, I'll bring it all in. But like against Reanimator, like maybe I don't need both Grafdigger's Cages if I'm not bringing it into Reanimator because my Oops matchup is already going to be pretty decent considering I'm running Ancient Tomb Torpor Orb and I'm gonna have Stifles or Consigns, and I'm gonna have already the Soul Guide Lantern main, and it's like they
Yeah.
can't really beat a Doorkeeper Thrall. Like it's actually really hard for them to beat a Doorkeeper Thrall, especially game one. Um, like if I just go Ancient Tomb Torpor Orb, like their lines are shut off super hard.
Yeah, this is a good example of why I think when you mentioned the idea, my first thought was brewing or building a deck from A to Z instead of from A to G. And that's basically to illustrate that you obviously have a lot of good ideas. You have a like intuitive idea about what needs to be in a sideboard, but at the end of the day, it's a full puzzle piece, and the numbers might not work out right. This is also the difference between a brew and a very established deck. Let's take something like the established Teamer Delver decks. Those are just, but it also took a lot of years to nail the kind of sideboard ratio of 2 to 3 graveyard hates, 2 to 3 pyroblasts, and down the list we go, right? Some chalice
Yeah,
removal, this and that. And then it actually adds up with the deck. So that's part of why that is an established deck, that it's the full puzzle piece. You don't end up with like terrible cards in very many matchups, if any. and you usually will do that with decks that simply, where the same amount of work hasn't been put into it. That's just this simple reason. So I was actually quite curious to start the conversation a little bit about talking about creativity and some of the stuff you told me when we first got to know each other, what you like to do as a player. You would say something like, "Oh yeah, I always like to like I have some, let's say, pet strategies, and I like to play something a little bit off metagame, and I like to go down this path, and I sideboard on vibes." So a lot of those things will be different from player to player.
Yeah.
So maybe you can talk a little bit about like how does your idea start? Like what's your A when it comes to an idea and
Yeah.
putting it into battle in Legacy?
So, should I? It's actually pretty interesting. So obviously, the deck that had the most success was the Eternal Weekend top 8 list.
Yeah.
That Bosch and Roll got top 8 with, and basically that deck started because I said like the history of the deck of like how I first got the list.
Yeah, sure.
That's all described in the Bosch and Roll video, and I wrote like an article. And there's like you can find it if you want, or I can tell you if you want
Yeah,
to ask
sure.
me later for chat and your viewers, and your YouTube viewers. But basically the idea is like, well, one, with the Stifle Knot deck, I already really like that strategy. I think the strategy is very good fun. I think it's the type of Magic I like to play. It's like a blue deck that also can operate on a lot of interactivity. It's a deck that has like a lot of like quote unquote cool things going on and like fun little intricate plays. So I really like decks where you have a lot of options, where you have a lot of like cheeky answers to things. So like the types of decks that I've had success with are like my bug. I call it bug shit pile. Because the running joke in my friend group, my Magic friend group, is any blue X deck that isn't like Delver is just XXX shit pile.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
I think on stream you would call it trade binder.
Yeah.
So we could use those two words interchangeably. So
Yep.
these like quote unquote shit pile decks or trade binder decks where I'm just finding cool cards that I see have some kind of purpose or I have a vision with, or cards that I think are underplayed, or cards that I just that I think are just good cards that people don't play because they're not like in traditional lists. So to give a few examples, right, like in the bug deck, I think Witherbloom Command is a really good card. I think
Yep.
Abrupt Decay is really good. It's really good right now. I think Life from the Lone Wasteland is underplayed, like perpetually. I think that combo is underplayed. I don't think enough blue decks are abusing it. Personally, there's like a lot of other things. So with the Esper Stifle Knot deck, because that one actually went from A to Z, and
Yeah,
I guess I'm
exactly.
like
That's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this, oh, this reason to,
Yeah.
now I want to work on this deck. So that could be a new
So-
printing, or it could be like Wasteland Recursion and metagame. Then you
Curie.
go from there. Like what was
It was
what
Curie.
kickstarted it? Because it's been a deck on and off for 20 years, right?
Stifle, yeah, it was Curie really. I was on like
Okay.
traditional Stifle Knot decks for a while, using Doorkeeper Thrall, using whatever. But the one thing I found was that even if you bring in a Dreadnought, it's so easy to remove because of Fatal Push. Like Fatal Push
Yeah.
is obviously the premier removal spell for that Eternal Weekend, um, and it was just so easy to remove. But then I kind of came up with this concept of, what if I overloaded removal?
Yep.
And what if I just built a deck around the idea that every threat needs to be removed? And so Curie came out, and Frog was already in the format, and obviously Curie is worse than Frog on average. But what if Curie is just Frog 5, 6, 7? Or Frog, in my case, I was running a 3-3 split between Frog and Curie. But
Oh, wow.
basically, the idea was, I'm going to overload their removal. I'm going to run Tamios, they have to be removed. I'm going to run Frogs, they have to be removed. I'm going to run Curies, they have to be removed. Why? Because of the threat of a Dreadnought. If that thing connects, the game is over. I'm going to run Oculus, because if that even gets one creature in play, all of a sudden, like, even a 2-2 can be good enough, and sometimes you just high roll, right? You hit the Dreadnought, which isn't even that much of a high roll. Like, you can actually hit them pretty frequently. So the idea about that deck was I wanted a deck that was fair, that I wanted to play Stifle Knot, I wanted to play Curie, because I thought Curie was really good. Um, Curie was especially good because removal was so stretched thin because of Frog. So, the idea of that deck was, what if I just ran a deck that uses the Curie Stifle Knot combo as its finisher, and following that, um, the I kind of started working on the deck a lot, and the one thing I found was frogs always got removed, but Curies did not always get removed.
Mhm.
And guess what happens when a Curie doesn't get removed and I have a Dreadnought in hand? Well, the game is over. I drew
Yep.
12 cards. Um, so that was kind of the premise of that deck. And now our traditional Stifle Knot lists were always on like the Doorkeeper Throw Moldrifter strategy, but I just found that strategy wasn't very resilient, and it
Yeah.
folded to a lot. And the one thing I noticed was that if Doorkeeper Throw was bad, then the deck was bad. If
Yeah.
Doorkeeper Throw is good, those decks are good. Um, and so
Yeah.
I was like, I want to move away from Doorkeeper Thrall, and I want to play this like Esper list that's using Frog as removal bait essentially for my Curie Dreadnought combo. And to building on that list even further, UB Tempo, I still think to this day was a bad deck. I don't think that deck was very good. I think that deck only was had results because it was so overplayed, because it was the tempo deck of the format, and the moto grinders love their tempo decks. And I
Yeah.
say that because UV tempo with like Frog and Nethergoyf and Tamio was not really a tempo deck. That deck wasn't killing you. That deck was drowning you out in cards. That's how that deck was
Yeah.
playing.
It was very mid-rangey.
It
I
was
agree.
it was very mid range. It was never trying to kill you. And so but I felt the problem with that deck was that it just didn't kill you. Like you could do all these things, but then into so many matchups, like especially like combo, especially other things, like you just gave them too much time. Like if you just played
Yeah.
an early Murktide, and it just wasn't very good. And so the idea is, what if I just kind of use that UV shell, and actually, there's a lot that went into that deck. There's a lot of very specific card choices that went a really long way. The sideboard was very meticulously crafted.
Yeah.
Um, like the whole deck was just a huge, huge kind of like work of love and labor and like months and months of work. And I'm definitely having trouble like repeating that. So that's kind of where this came from.
Yeah.
The
So all of this is like amazing backstory because you actually succeeded at this. Let's just say this was like the task at hand. You did succeed, and you want to kind of repeat that process, right? So what we need to do is basically see what did you do right at the time. It's like when you have won a game of Magic and you show me the replay. I want to ask you why did you win this game? We want to build confidence. We want to look into what we did right in the past so we can do more right things in the future. So to sum up, you stay true to how you love to play the game. First of all,
Mhm.
you put into like some kind of existing shell, cantrips, dazes, forces. Was it
Mhm.
the Thoughtseize deck?
It was. That was actually a very key thing that I added pretty close to last minute. I was
Yeah.
doing a testing session. You might know Joyful Waffle.
Yeah, I know
Um,
the name at least.
yeah, yeah. He's. I was playing with him and I was asking him about Thoughtseize, and he's like, "Dude, I think Thoughtseize is really good right now, and any deck should play. Like any deck that can feasibly run it should run it."
Yeah.
And that was very pivotal to doing well with that deck, because Thoughtseize was so important, because it's kind of doubling up on the plan of like getting rid of the removal, right? Like turn one, I'd much rather Thoughtseize take a plow, take a push, take a frog out of their hand, whatever. Like obviously it depends on the case and what my hand is, but it was so pivotal. So yeah, it was a Thoughtseize deck.
Okay, so you checked a lot of boxes. You stayed true to how you love to play the game. You accounted for the metagame at hand, which is very removal heavy, so you compensated for that by overloading. This is a very, very good term to have in your arsenal where you can play like vintage and then, oh yeah, this deck is bad against Pyroblast, but then if you just have a million blue cards, then at that point it doesn't really matter. But if you
Yeah.
only have like 8 key blue cards, then you're actually weak to Pyroblast. But if you have 16, you're not actually weak to Pyroblast,
Yeah.
right? So you can, they have to kill the one thing, then the second thing resolves, or the third thing will stick, or whatever the case may be. So you actually built your deck on solid logic. You also got a lot of. You also told me about the Doorkeeper Thrall, because this is funny, because around a year ago, I was lucky to win the Legacy Mox, and at that point, Doorkeeper Thrall was amazing because the Goblins deck was legal.
Yes.
But once Namesticker got banned, we lost a lot of, what do you call that, like
I
mileage out of the
yeah.
Thrall,
So
like the
when Grief got banned and when
yeah, that as well.
Namesticker got banned, with each of those bannings, that Stifle Knot got worse because those were two of its best matchups.
Yeah, exactly. And it was because of the incidental hate from
Yeah.
your enabler. So I always tell people that you need to pick the right stifle cards, quote unquote stifle cards, so that they don't just enable your deck, but also disrupts the metagame. So we have to stay true to how we love to play, our own strengths. We have to stay true to having a functional deck in a vacuum, and we also need to account for the metagame at hand. We can't just build something because we like the cards. They have to make sense in the metagame. It's the only reason I can register Blood Moon and win a tournament. That's because people built greedy mana bases. If they didn't do that, I couldn't win a tournament with Blood Moon.
Yeah.
Like, all of those things might be very intuitive at this point, but I think it's always good to explain why. Why was Doorkeeper Thrall good at some point, and then actually mention the decks. So, why did you do well at Eternal Weekend? Why was this deck successful? And that is because you accounted for all of those things, including the metagame at hand. And yeah, I think that example is like one of the best examples you can ever give. So you have that, and you should use that as just motivation, but also be very, very humble about that. Sometimes it has to be like the perfect storm for that to happen again. So that may be a unique occurrence, or it's something you can strive for again. That sounds like the dream when you can make your favorite deck like a serious metagame deck. That's amazing.
It's
I
interesting.
want
It's
go ahead
interesting
while I
because
find something here.
it's funny because obviously the Stifle Knot deck was the big one, and I had a lot of people hitting me up about that deck and playing that deck after Eternal Weekend, and even seeing like random people in leagues play it. And it's
Yeah.
always funny because all the time now, I'll get people message me and be like, "Yo, I copied your Stifle Knot list," or I was even at MagicCon, and
Yeah.
someone came up to me and goes, "I'm using your bug deck in the Legacy Cup right now." I'm like, "Wait, what bug deck?" It's like, "Oh, the
Yeah.
one you were trophying on." I was like, "Oh my god, people!" I didn't realize how many people look at those 5-0 dumps, but a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
and someone would copy because I had gotten like 4 or 5 trophies with that deck or something, and
Yeah, that's
had-
cool.
And someone was like, "Oh yeah, I really like the deck," and they top aided with it too, which is pretty cool. I was like, "Holy shit,
Yeah,
dude! That was
that
like a
impact of the next link in the inspiration chain. I think that's pretty darn awesome.
so like
Um,
yeah, I definitely think I'm like a decent deck builder. I wouldn't say I'm a good deck builder because obviously like
yeah,
there's only a couple of decks that I built that have actually kind of caught on. Um,
yeah, that was actually something I wanted to talk a little bit about. Is there's a lot of the way people talk about. I can use myself an example here. Around a year ago, I quit my day job to only do Magic.
mhm.
And a lot of people would be like, "Oh, I don't know about that. Could be too niche. Legacy and vintage. Like you're an old head, and might not work." But the whole point is, I was never worried about not, succeeding.
Yeah,
It wouldn't be that like maybe 6 months from now, I have to go back to a normal job, and then I'm just going to be happy that I gave myself the chance to succeed. Right? I'm not worried about failing. I'm worried about turning rocks and see if there's hidden treasure under there. So you should definitely approach brewing the same way. You should just be happy that you have that drive because 99 out of 100 players, they will just give up and go to Goldfish and load up a deck from a winning player. So
Yeah.
they basically rob themselves of that journey that you went on with the Dreadnought deck. So please continue doing that. Just be realistic about what your actual success rate is going to be,
yeah.
and grow stronger and have fun with that process. It's really not. You shouldn't worry about failing or losing any face, or it's just a made up thing by people who are not willing to approach like go for success basically. So
Yeah.
whether you're a good deck builder or a bad deck builder, I don't think that's like the right terminology. You're willing to use your brain in that way and get creative. And then you found the pot of gold for that Eternal Weekend, and that should just be the driving force.
It's funny because like if you go on the Stifle Knot Discord, I've been telling people to play this Ancient Tomb list, and a lot of people have been saying they've had a lot of success with it. So that always feels good to see. But overall, it's just been a deck that I like. Stifle Knot in general is just kind of like my baby, right?
Yeah.
The so I've been working on this new list, and I've been running it through leagues. I've choked on a few challenges on like the super meme version of like Scroll of Fate and Chalice that we
Sure.
played on Friday. So it's been like decent. So I felt pretty good about it, and this is all to say that I don't necessarily feel bad about the deck. Like I don't necessarily feel bad or think it's a bad deck. In fact, I think it's actually a good deck that just needs
Yeah.
work. Um, but I'm also like, as you said, right? Like, how many people just go on Moto, copy the showcases? What, next weekend or something?
Yeah.
Um,
This Sunday.
I'm hoping I'll be able to play, but it's a long shot for me for sure. What time is it? Do you know actually?
Yeah, it's gonna be. Let's see. For you, it's gonna be at. What time is it for you now?
Oh, 11:30.
Oh, 11:30. So it's gonna be for you at 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, and I think that's also good because sometimes there's something about what is the leagues and what is the big leagues when it comes
Yeah.
to actually field testing something. And of course, you can get great matches in the leagues, but there's some, false sense of security. So you have to be really good at evaluating your, quality of opponent,
Yeah.
quality of their deck, and stuff like that when you're evaluating. But with that being said, I think it's just super awesome that you're using your creativity in that way because let's be honest, I'm using my creativity to tweak 2 cards out of a stock list, and you're using your creativity to build a deck from scratch, which is it's way too different. It's way too different things, right? And they're awesome in their own right, of course. But yeah, it's just really really cool. So I'm gonna just quickly share a screenshot here about the current legacy metagame. I don't know if you can get that up on your screen, but we
Yeah.
can kind of do a little bit of an exercise that I prepared here when it comes to having an idea and then actually using it on the field.
What's interesting is I do this on my stream a lot actually.
Okay.
I pull up MTG Goldfish and I go through and I look at what are the most popular decks right now, and I try to
Yeah.
think about what's my matchup, how do my cards line up, what does the sideboard look like. I do this exercise like probably every other day, honestly.
Yeah. Perfect. So you can lead the way here if you want. And you can use a current deck as we can use the blue. Or wait a minute, is this a new version? Is it the blue-white version we're talking
Yeah, the
about?
blue white version,
I,
the blue colorless version. That's still very much a work in progress. But
oh, okay. We
I think this
go
deck.
for the blue-white version here into this field, and then if you can
Yeah.
kind of lead the way, I will add if I have anything to add.
Let me link you the most recent list just so you
Yeah,
see.
perfect. Because at the end of the day, I remember when I was a kid, then I was like, oh, I had some cool cards in my binder. I want to make a deck. I didn't think about what do the guys at the store play. So I didn't really think the scenario all the way to the end. I just really wanted to play this Phantom Nishoba in my green-white deck. I didn't think about if it lined up well against the sea of players I would be playing against. So, okay, I think I've seen a little bit about this. And then it's kind of a... Okay, let's see. We're going a little less harder on some numbers, but we're 2 colors, less on the Ancient Tomb Saga plan, a little less on stock up. So keeping a lot of things, getting a bit higher card quality out of a second color.
Yep.
And then going a little less harder. We don't play the atrocious City of Traders for the awkwardness anymore, that was a very high variance card because sometimes it's really great and sometimes it's really bad.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's like a much
Yep.
more traditional type list.
Yeah, it's closer to that for sure.
I will say there's
Yeah.
a few changes I'd make. I don't think Curie is very good right now. I think there's too
Yeah.
many creature decks running around. I
Yeah.
don't think 3 stock
I-
up is correct either. I think I kind of want to go down to 2 stock up and maybe go up a Doorkeeper Thrall and maybe include like a Ponder or 2, but I'm not sure.
Oh, right, it's not even a ponder deck. Okay, yeah, I can see those. So basically, you should talk a little bit about cards like you already alluded to the fact that Curie, and then you said, oh, maybe there's too many creatures. So that's good because then it's you taking into account which decks am I going to be facing.
Mhm.
Also, you don't have the frogs anymore, so it's not like you have that critical mass of creatures that needs to
Yeah,
get dealt with. So the plan is just less consistent, and if you meet more resistance on the ground, the card can really underperform. So that's just the deeper analysis of why that card is not
yeah,
amazing here, but it was
exactly.
great in the deck you played 6 months ago, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I like that a lot. So maybe talk a little bit about the value you're getting from Thralls and Torpor Orb into this metagame.
So,
Um, yeah, and what stock up provides for the deck, maybe?
so the first thing is, so obviously we spoke about Curie. Thrall, I just like having diversity in my enablers. So you'll see we have 2 Thrall, 2 Torpor Orb, 2 Dress Down. Um,
Hmm.
and you can also see that I only have 3 Dreadnoughts and 3 Null Drifters. The reason for this is mostly because so I'll talk about the 3/3 with the Null Drifter and Dreadnought. Is one of the things I try to do in my Dreadnought list now is I don't need 4, and I use Saga as my makeshift Dreadnought. Um, and the reasoning for that is because I don't necessarily want the Dreadnoughts in my hand. I want the Dreadnoughts when I want them, but I also still want that enough where I can like reliably have
Yeah.
it. There was a
Yep.
heuristic someone told me, um, maybe like 10 to 15 years ago, where if you want to see 2 of something in a game, you put 4. If you want to see 1 of something in a game, you put 3. And if you want to see
I
a
think
card
it's my rule of thumb is is in your opening hand.
yeah,
What you just said, just your opening hand, and
yeah,
not, you know.
yeah,
But I agree with that, and I was gonna introduce that, but I think that's very very good. So either when you play 4 of a card, it's either you don't mind drawing multiples, or the first copy is so insane that you need to play 4.
yeah. And both Dreadnought and Drifter, you don't really want more than 1 in a game. Like, obviously, you want eventually, but you don't
Yeah,
really want to see, you don't want to see them in your opening hand most of the
you don't want to
time.
see 2 in your opener. Then you're on a virtual mulligan that's not gonna help you the first couple of
Right.
turns.
Unless you have obviously the nuts of like you have enabler force backup double dreadnought, right? Like if you have that, then sure. But
Yeah,
that,
definitely.
that's a best case scenario, and
Yep.
I don't want to think about best case scenarios. I want to think about the average scenario.
Yeah, we need to make sure our deck has upside, of course, but we should also worry about, when things aren't going perfectly. So I'm 100% on board with that analysis.
And then with the enablers, I think dress down is always going to be the best enabler because it's the only way you don't get 2 for 1 when you bring in a dreadnought. Um, so dress down in general is good. It pitches to force. It enables some really cool plays. I don't know if you've ever played dress down in response to an Orim's chant against breakfast, but it feels pretty
I
good.
haven't. I
It
haven't, but
feels
that sounds
pretty.
like cool
It,
flexibility and very valuable to think about when you're evaluating that card. y- Of course, the first thing is it's a cantripping stifle for the dreadnought and an enabler. But then you also have to think about what does it do into the field, right?
mm-hmm.
Because if it did absolutely nothing, it probably wouldn't be viable. But if it does 12 small things against all the top decks, then it's probably viable. So it's
It
it's
does
the
12
fine line
small. Yeah.
between cute idea and viable solution, right?
It definitely does 12 small things against all the top decks.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
that was a fair way to put it.
yeah, it's just a good card. And in fact, maybe one of the Curie should be a third dress down. Because Curie acts as like a pseudo enabler, but it's like a enabler.
Yeah, it's not that reliable.
Exactly.
Can die to a lot of things.
Yeah, the fact that it dies to Bolt too is just the kind of the worst part
Yeah.
about it. Now that Delver is like a real deck again. If it didn't die to Bolt, I'd consider it a lot more. But because it dies to Bolt and Delver is the most popular fair deck, then obviously I'm not going to want to play it. So the two thralls, 2 dress down, 2 torpor orb. So the torpor orb is specifically good because I want to be playing. So we'll work backwards on the torpor orb. The first thing is Stock Up got released. I think Stock Up is really good. There's been so many games where people have played Bowmaster into me, and I just have Stock Up to, counteract the Bowmasters to stock up on cards, if you will. And I think Stock Up is really good because not only are we an A plus B combo deck, we're also just a blue deck, obviously. So our card quality is not always the highest when we have so much air in the deck in the form of like cantrips and forces. So being able to stock up, look at the top 5 cards, and just pick the 2 best is really, really valuable. And so I really wanted to build an A plus B deck, so Stifle Not, that leverage stock up. And so stock up is 2U. So that's as a mono red player would say 2U is 2 mana, or 2 red is 2 mana because of Ancient Tomb. So in my eyes, I was thinking I've been trying to make Ancient Tomb work for a while because I have Tamiyo, and Tamiyo Ancient Tomb Saga is a win condition by itself, right? Like Tamiyo makes clues. If you don't need the clues, you can draw a card. You have the Ancient Tomb to draw the card immediately while keeping blue mana up. You also have the Ancient Tomb Saga backup plan. Saga also gets Dreadnought when you need it, which is really good when we want to be trimming Dreadnought, so we can get it when we need it, when we want it. And then
which word did you use for it's your? You didn't say proxy Dreadnoughts. You said something else.
Oh,
the sagas.
Oh, I can't remember what word I used now. But
it was a good word, and it was very, very precise.
It was my backup Dreadnoughts.
Yeah, it was a more fancy word, but it's a great point that it's not an actual Dreadnought, but it's an avenue to get a Dreadnought, and that is good enough.
Dreadnought?
Yeah, it was. We were definitely in the flashing our Latin or Greek skills, but it was a very good way to explain that you have 5 virtual copies, but you only have 3 actual copies, and that's good because it's not good to see 2 in your opener, basically. So
exactly. So
that's a good explanation.
So we have Ancient Tomb that works with Stock Up, that works with Saga. We have Dreadnought that works with Saga. We have Tamiyo that works with both Ancient Tomb and Saga. So there's just an incredible amount of synergy in all of these cards. And then Null Drifter specifically also to you. And so that got me thinking, if I want to run Ancient Tomb, because I want to run Stock Up and I have Tamiyo, I want to use Ancient Tomb. So what if I just use Torpor Orb? Because then I can do the play pattern of turn 1 Torpor Orb, turn 2 Null Drifter. And my opponent, if I'm on the play, my opponent has 1 land to interact with all of that. And that is really hard for a lot of decks to deal with, because you can't daze it. Otherwise, I just play it again next turn. I drew 2 cards. You're super card negative. If you force it, you're super card negative. Because I'm drawing 2 cards, you're going down 2 cards. I'm up 4 cards if you force my Null Drifter, and you have to force it. Because if you don't, you're going to lose a land every turn. You're going to lose a permanent every turn. So just this incredible synergy between Torpor Orb, between Ancient Tomb, Stock Up, Dreadnought, Tamiyo, is just...
Yeah, and this is a good way to view it, because this is very... This deck is not a one where, your individual cards are just bangers, right? We need to pair our cards to be competitive, right? So I really like how you put so much thought into just also the ratio between Dreadnoughts and Enablers is something that I'm sure is a reoccurring theme, but it's probably very natural to you how many you need in comparison with each other. So for this deck, you can argue that you're on a 7 to 5 ratio for counting Sagas as Dreadnoughts, right? Mm-hmm. And we're counting Curies as Enablers, which is it just goes to show that you very carefully pick that ratio, and you try to diversify as much as possible, covering as many angles as possible, while still trying to execute your game plan consistently. So. This might look all over the place, but it is a very, very... You put a lot of thought into putting this together, so I really appreciate that one. Then if we can try and switch the conversation a little bit away from enabling our own deck and onto what are we going to be playing against. So that's what the metagame will tell us. So you can lead the conversation, or I can do it. It's up to you.
So we can... I just pulled up the Goldfish link, the page that you sent. So looking at what is this, the top 15 decks? So Dimir Reanimator, blue-black. I have 4 forces, I have plows, I have ways to stop the reanimation, I have a main deck Soul Guide Lantern. Doorkeeper Throw also, like all the enablers also do a number on the deck, because their fair play in game 1 is very bad. So if I can even stop the reanimation stuff that's going on, I think we're in a winning scenario for sure. And overall, I think the deck has a decent Reanimator matchup. Obviously, the deck is so good because if you just have Entomb Reanimate Days, which happens pretty often, they're all 4-ofs, like, not many decks can beat that, especially if you win the die roll. So, it's one of those decks that I'm prepared for. I think I can fight against, and I'm, like, pretty happy when I play it. In general, obviously, I'm not happy when I play just because I played against the deck so much, and it's like so frustrating to play against. But you know, I'm not upset, right? Like I think I have a reasonable chance of beating the deck, even game one, specifically because we have Plow too. So Plow is instrumental because if I can stop the reanimation and then I can plow it, then it's fine. There's no problem. Now we're actually probably winning that game because now they have one less reanimation target. And especially if it's an Atraxa and they only have an Archon left, I can beat an Archon very easily. It's a lot harder for me to beat an Atraxa that draws 6 cards on turn 2. So overall, pretty happy with that matchup. Red Stompy. I mean, did you want to talk about that at all, or did you want to say?
Yeah, it was mainly just I wanted to talk a little bit about my methods. I really like grouping decks together, so that would be adding something like Oops onto Dimir Reanimator and categorizing that as graveyard. It could be something like adding Painter and Eldrazi to the Red Stomp, and then you kind of have some Ancient Tomb decks where, you know, cards like Consign are going to be good against everybody. Hydro is good against 2 out of the 3. Needle effects are good against them to some extent. We have to think about Chalice of the Void out of 2 out of 3. And then we kind of group together. We can go like random Storm decks and Doomsday together, Show and Tell decks together, Tempo decks like Delver and Dimir decks together. And then we just get a good idea about how do those decks kill creatures, how do those decks disrupt us, and what do we need to do to kind of meet them halfway there with our mainly the stifle slots to try and get value across the board, but also out of the sideboard to, you know, be satisfied about the matchups. Because at the end of the day, what I believe anyway is that any competitive matchup in Magic is within 60-40. So everything is up for grabs and playable as long as we have a good deck. If it's not within 60-40, then we probably don't even have a good deck to begin with. So we have a fighting chance, but we also need the percentages to make sense, because if they're 45 across the board, deck choice doesn't make sense, right? So we also need to feel really confident in enough matchups. Let's say 2/3 of what we see here. We should feel confident, right? So there's just some rule of thumbs. I like looking for crossover cards. I like looking at, how many Oops decks versus Reanimator decks are doing well these days. Then I will know what kind of graveyard hate I need. If there's Nadu in the mix, I'm really excited about playing Grafdigger's Cage. That could be a good example. So yeah, it's mainly that it makes our deck choice makes sense into the field. Also, it's very important. The Reanimator is way up here. It was maybe at half of this or 1/3 of this a month or two ago. So I really like following these percentages, because then I basically know which decks are niche and which decks are actual, metagame beaters. Because I don't mind losing to a 2% deck, but if something is 7% deck and I disrespect it, I probably haven't done my homework enough. So I keep a lot of track of these numbers to determine. For instance, you have 3 Hydroblast in your sideboard. I think that number is quite high. So I just guess that you have some kind of you really want your edge against your red deck, or like there's some priority there from like personal thing, and then you also have a couple of anti-combo cards, which is what I call the Lavinia Null Rod, and those cards are not really against the top of the metagame. They're not amazing or anything, but on any given Sunday they can be impactful against niche decks like random Storm decks or Mystic Forge or whatever the case may be. So maybe talk a little bit about your personal preferences when rounding out your sideboard, like after having the, obligatory graveyard hates and, consigns and hydros, then how do you finish your sideboard?
So the Lavinia and the Null Rod, the Lavinia is there only because in leagues you get a lot more combo than you would in other types of decks.
Right.
So that's literally just there because of the league meta. Same with the 2 main deck Force Negations. You see a lot of like the Necro Dominance decks. Like I see a Necro Dominance probably at least like 2-3 times a day against the Delver deck. So the Blue Blast, I know you said that's a lot, but I find Blue Blast to just be a good card. It's good against Delver. It's good against every red deck, obviously. And those are decks that I think are pretty popular and pretty played. Like Delver and Red Stompy are probably outside of, like, for whatever reason in paper, Nadu is by far and away the most popular deck. So I think in paper I'd build this a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, looking at
So
this now. Oh, go ahead.
So just a random detail that I thought about here is the Temur Delver is way down, and the Dimir decks combined are way up. So that is something that I have used in the past to evaluate the Hydroblast value, because obviously it's
Mm-hmm.
good against Stompy. Then I have to keep track of whether Painter is a relevant deck or Painter is a 1% deck. And also need to keep track of the day's flavor of the week to
Yeah.
justify. So, for instance, into the exact metagame we have in front of us here, I think running 3 Hydros is too many.
Okay.
But if Temur Delver gets to, the 6 or 7%, or it kind of swap with Dimir, then all of a sudden I think 3 is good, right? So it's really a work in progress when it comes to also the number of consigns. I think reasonably you could play 3. I don't think that would be the end of the world. Um, so there's just a little bit to be gained by studying the numbers. Like, if I didn't do this daily, would have no idea Temur Delver was down to below 3%. That's actually amazes me still.
Yeah, Rug Delver being that low, because I see it a lot, but obviously maybe I'm just like overthinking it because Delver is just Delver and it was gone for a little bit, so seeing it again is like a little more surprising than it would have been like pre-fog.
It did do well the last, let's say, 3 months. Like after the bannings in the first couple of months of this year, you would even see Temur was the go-to version, and you would have Grixis sometimes to punish, because Bowmasters and Baragorf are so good in the pseudo mirror. But then the Grixis mana base is more heavily punished by Blood Moon, and then you kind of have this cat and mouse game of which version is the right to play weekend to weekend. And I think all of that matters to you, those tendencies, because your Hydroblasts are dead cards against Dimir.
Yeah.
So there's something, and your forces in the main deck are not good against that deck, so you need to make sure you actually have good cards to swap against Dimir, which usually, or at the moment, is not really the case, right? You don't really have any good cards against Dimir
Yeah.
aside from the endings.
Yeah, it's just take out the 2 force negations for 2 endings, and that's my sideboard plan.
Yeah, which is not ideal.
Which is not been great.
So that's
Admittedly.
something to think about if you're playing the showcase, because yeah, Dimir really put up a good weekend. I think it placed 5 or 6 decks out of in the Tabates combined of the 5 challengers throughout the week, which is pretty high conversion. That's more than 10%. So
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
something to think about, where you can add a little layer to how you build your sideboard, because I noticed you build a similar sideboard with the mono blue version, although we of course had fewer options when it came to that deck.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of the same thing, where can we play a little bit more crossover cards, check a few more boxes, and be a little bit more well-rounded. I think that's just sometimes the boring work that is for sure worth it, especially when you're playing leagues against so many different weird decks. And then
Yeah.
cards like the Lavinias and the Null Rods can be really awesome. So that, again, is a testament to the field you're playing into, and I like that a lot. Maybe talk a little about your Graveyard Hate split here, because that
Yeah.
is a bit unorthodox.
So the Containment Priest is specifically there because I feel like Show and Tell has been making a rise. It not only does it hit Show and Tell, but it hits Oops and it hits Reanimator, all on a 2/2 flash body. So I think it's just overall just like a good like universal answer to all these types of strategies. In fact, Containment Priest is basically just Grafdigger's Cage against that can't be Force of Vigor against Oops. And then beyond that, the 2 Grafdigger's Cages, I like having 1 Grafdigger's Cage because it's just the best graveyard hate against Oops.
Yeah.
It's obviously one of the most popular decks. If not, I would argue that Oops is probably the best deck right now. If not, at least top 2, top 3.
It's always a tough one, right? Because if that was the general consensus, people would kind of, with their sideboarding, make sure that that's not the case. Like, Oops will always have a limit to how far it can go,
Exactly.
because it's just a matter of people's willingness to tweak for it.
So Grafdigger's Cage is that. Should I talk about the Soul Guide Lantern main?
Yeah, that as well because it's kind of part of your package, right? 1+3.
Yeah, just a graveyard hate piece. That's a full graveyard wipe because that's important against oops. Like just having like a spot removal thing like a ghost vacuum isn't going to do anything against oops. But having the full light removal does do something against oops. Like if you do it in response to the Narcomoeba trigger, like they can't really do anything after that. Um, the 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 cages are there just because of oops. Obviously, I like having two because I bring one in against Reanimator, and I bring the second in against like Dredge and oops and all of that. The
Okay.
Containment Priest, I didn't only want two things in this side for it. I did want a third. And Containment Priest is a good catch-all answer for both Dredge, oops, but also hits Show and Tell pretty effectively. Um, it's also pretty funny because it's just like sometimes a 2 mana 2/2 flash is just better than other things, especially if I need to go fast. Like sometimes it's just quite literally just an efficient threat. Um, I don't bring it in for that very often, but it is something I do think about when I consider it. I just think Containment Priest hits a lot. It's good.
Yeah.
It can catch
So
people
let's
off guard.
so let me give you this scenario. If
Yeah.
Show and Tell was not a magic card, if that was unprinted, would you ever play Containment Priest?
Uh, Probably not.
Yeah. So that is basically just to say that because of and obviously I left out the percentage here. So because of a 2% deck, you're playing a graveyard hate piece that is, when it's too slow against oops, that is the difference between winning and losing. So it's just something to think about whether how much you care about niche decks, because it does give you extra value. But I would argue that when you lose with one land in play against oops, you're going to feel quite bad about that Containment Priest versus something that would have cost 0 or 1 mana. Compared to the upside of having one extra live card against, the occasional sneak and show. And it's funnily enough, the last two show and tell decks that did well was like omniscience type decks, like no sneak attack. So
Yeah.
also something to think about when really fine tuning how much you care about the flexibility and how much you care about the actual top decks that you know you're going to be facing.
Yeah.
I personally highly prefer to not lose to oops all spells. And then I'll kind of give up my crossover for the niche combo deck in the process and be pretty happy about it. That's a personal preference, of course. I can see the Priest slot, the Lavinia slot, the Nullrod slot. Those are kind of your way of hedging against the Wild West metagame, so to speak.
The the Containment Priest is kind of a holdover from the Eternal Weekend list, and the reason I ran Containment Priest in Eternal Weekend was because if you remember, the deck that won the showcase right before Eternal Weekend was actually Show and Tell using Yggdrasil. So it wasn't like it was super all in on the Show and Tell plan. With all these different ways, so that was specifically a hedge for that, and it worked really well for me at Eternal Weekend because I did play against Show and Tell, and Reanimator, and it came in against both those things, and it worked really well in both those. So I was pretty happy with it.
And that's for sure. If Sneak and Show was like I don't know 5% deck and it just won a big tournament or whatever, then for sure, card like Containment Priest has a lot of value.
Mm-hmm.
So it's mainly it's just funny to kind of dig into the fact that when you tweaked on a mono blue version, then you went into white, and then nostalgia kicked in on the Containment Priest, and it took our conversation here to kind of realize how you got there.
This was the first list.
You worked on this before the blue deck? Fair enough.
Yeah, the blue deck came to me in a fever dream.
Yeah, okay, got it. So mine is that order of things, and then the same point. It's kind of cool because I for sure have this as well. Just because I add a color, it doesn't make the white option better than what was available in mono blue.
Yeah.
So there's just something to think about there. What's most important? And I would argue right now I'm pretty confident in saying that it's not dying early to oops is more important than hedging against sneak decks with my graveyard hate. But that's like, it's in the really small details, but it's still, it's valuable in my opinion.
Makes sense. No, I agree with that, and I think you're right. I think the 3 blue blasts, I think you're right, are too many, because, like, I have 3 basics. Like, Blood Moon isn't that big of an issue. Like, I can actually play around Blood Moon relatively easily.
Yeah, I think
Containment
two's a
freeze.
good number. So it's mainly just to say that if you can trim that card, you can at least think about those anti-combo cards. Just make sure that you have solid cards against Dimir to bring in. I think that would be like super valuable because it's one of the top decks, especially if you're playing the showcase. Tameo
Yeah,
decks are out in force.
I
So
agree.
there's something about the showcase usually being quite predictable when it comes to decks. Then you don't have to worry about that many 1% or 2% decks, and it's a lot about beating the big decks. I usually would say something like you need to check certain boxes, and those boxes, in my opinion, are don't lose to Graveyard, don't lose to Blood Moon, don't lose to Chalice of the Void, and have some kind of counterplay in the what I call the Ponder Mirror,
Yeah,
which could be anything from Delver to Blue Black Tempo to like Orcish Bowmaster is like the perfect example of a card that is good against all Ponder decks.
yeah.
So there's something to be gained there, but that's basically the Graveyard, the Blood Moon, the Chalice, and the Blue Arms Race.
And to that end, I've actually thought about maybe Hull Breachers because I'm on Ancient Tomb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because Hull Breacher is obviously very good, and if I can get it in response to a brainstorm, like obviously if you can get a response to a brainstorm, you win the game. The but
I can see that. Also, it's good against ring decks.
yeah, actually ring decks are a problem for my list too.
So there's something there. You can cut a few corners and be like, okay, Hull Breacher is my, let's say, anti-combo card, but I can also bring it in against any fair Ponder deck. So it's not as heavy hitting as Lavinia and Nullrod, but it's more. It'll come in more often. It'll upgrade your deck more often.
Yeah, and I could even bring it in against like the UV decks, just because
Exactly.
I don't really have great stuff to take out anyway. I don't really have great stuff to bring in. I don't really want forces in my deck against those decks most of the time.
That was exactly my main motivation. That with your current setup, you can go -2 negations +2 endings, more or
Yeah.
less. But if you add some more flexible cards in the Lavinia Nullrod third Hydro slot, then all of a sudden you have, a more well-rounded deck for games 2 and 3 against a very, very popular archetype.
Yeah. So I
And
actually
Hullbreacher is a good call.
made a duplicate of the deck, talking about some of the changes. So I've taken out one Hydroblast, and I've taken out the Containment Priest. So
Yeah.
I think I like the Nullrod, but I think we only want one of Nullrod or Lavinia. I don't think we want both.
Yeah. I was mainly looking at those two as a way to get some cards in there that are viable against combo, not as backbreaking, but they come in against all fair blue decks as well.
So Hull Breacher.
Hullbreacher is a good shout. I didn't think it all the way through, but that was at least a card that checks those boxes.
Yeah, and with Ancient Tomb, I'm much more inclined to play it.
Yeah, it's more realistic to fire it off. So that's like.
And I'm not a Daze deck either, so it's actually like I can get to 3 mana pretty often, even without Ancient Tomb.
Yeah, that's definitely not off the table. So yeah, that's more or less. So just to sum up things here, you have like the perfect fairy tale story of building a deck out of passion and then reaching, and tier 1 deck, right?
Yeah.
So you're like on this constant using your imagination, challenging yourself, playing cards you love to play, and you kind of try and make that perfect mixture once again, right?
Yeah.
And I think you should just keep going at it and applying. Just always use the logic of, am I, as you said, the fever dream, like those kind of metaphors referring to, are we doing things out of the right reasons? So we need to both have fun and stay true to why we love the game, but also respect the actual metagame at hand and really take that seriously. So once you have that combination, you can actually start getting there. If you just go, oh, I hope I just never play against this deck, or then you're probably on the wrong path. Like you need to get to some situation where you're comfortable against, the top 10 decks, and you have a fighting chance. And you should probably even be favored against, or feel favored against, 2/3 or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And then at that point, it's a lot about monitoring the metagame, how hard do I go on Graveyard Hate, how hard do I go on Consigns and Hydros, what's my flex slots, and how can I find a little bit of cheeky crossover to make sure I don't have these nasty surprises during sideboarding. I remember you told me about the blue version, and then your theory was, when I minus Chalice, I add Hydroblast, because the opponent's deck is also a Chalice deck, and then you got queued into Painter and realized you wanted both Chalice and Hydro, so that plan was obviously flawed, right?
Yeah.
I've had that as well in Mono Red Prison, where I'm like, I'll just have my Pyroblasts, because they get countered by Chalice. Then I have to rethink what's going on here and kind of accommodate the context. You just need to think your thoughts through and how do they work in reality. That's kind of what some people find boring, but I think it'll go a long way to making, because I see the deck as a 75 masterpiece. I don't see the deck as 60 cards with a lot of synergy and then randomly build sideboard. Then you're not going to do well, right? You need the whole deck to make sense with the sideboard.
Yeah, that makes sense. And kind of, I like what you said too, right? Like make it make sense of the sideboard, and make it, build it as a 75 cohesive, and try to think about attacking the top 10 meta. Like, if show and tell is 3%, there's no reason to dedicate a sideboard slot to show and tell, when there's better ways to attack show and tell that could also hit more relevant decks in the meta, right?
Yeah, it's more, then you have 17% reanimator, 6% oops, where Priest can be too slow. Like, you're on the draw, they have Entomb Reanimate, Priest is not going to do anything unless you have a very specific hand.
Yeah.
And it's just not a good investment, numbers wise. Sometimes you need to find the crossover. I remember some control decks in the past, like Miracles and stuff like that, but back then we didn't have turn 1 graveyard decks, so you could actually afford running Priest and Sneak Attack was a rough pairing, so you could actually afford it at that point. But I think now, if you need a card that makes the math check out so you can keep enough hands against the oops and beat them. You don't need a card that is only good on top of a Force of Will, which is basically what Containment Priest is.
Right.
So there's a little bit of, just don't die to those stupid decks, and then we fight a little bit harder the 2 times out of 100 you face Sneak Attack.
Yeah.
So checking the boxes of, let's say Mono Red Stompy, that deck could theoretically be at 2% at some point. Yeah. Then maybe you can play a bit more ambitious mana bases. Or Oops All Spells disappears, so now it's only Reanimator. Then you can trim a Graveyard Hate piece. Or Painter becomes a 1% deck. Then we might not need Hydroblast at all. Or like all of these stuff can change, so it's just something to keep an eye out on regularly, and you're already doing that, so you're definitely way better off than a lot of players who just play by vibes, or they play a league and then tweak their deck based on what they just faced, which is obviously not optimal. Then it's our emotions speaking, right?
Yeah.
So it's just that if you have solid reasoning and you're still heavily powered by how you love to play the game, I think that combination is what we should look for here.
So speaking on all that, the combination that we're looking for then with this deck, right, is attacking the meta. Oh shit! I opened up Copilot again. Attacking the meta without sacrificing sideboard slots that are too narrow for too narrow matchups, right? Like,
I would say so, because at the end of the day,
like
the reality is,
you're on the draw Containment Priest and Tomb Reanimate, you're dead.
Yeah, and that's simply unacceptable when you look at the percentages. So we have to stay true to what's most likely to happen. But I have a few friends who have, whenever they build a sideboard, they also love the, oh, I'll just play a Brazen Borrower, or I'll play Engineered Explosives. Or Needle, like some cards that basically give them that warm, fuzzy feeling of no matter what I'm facing, I'm gonna have some outs, right? Sometimes that is a good feeling to have. So it's mainly just to say that chances are this deck is not in a vacuum strong enough that you can allow yourself to play niche cards. I think you need to play a tournament and then you have used all your 15 sideboard cards throughout that tournament.
Yeah.
I don't think you can get away with having, a disadvantage of less sideboard cards or slower sideboard cards. I think you need to, make it all count for a deck like this to do well. That's my gut feeling anyway. Then you can have like the Mere Reanimator. Then sometimes you just draw like a freaking champ and you only used 9 of your sideboard cards and you did crush everyone. So that's the difference between a deck in the making and a S tier deck, right?
Right. I kind of like what you said too, right? Like, Dimir Reanimator, the power level is so high and it's so like straightforward and it's so like it's so good at what it's trying to do that it doesn't really matter if you didn't draw your sideboard cards if you were able to do the thing. But our deck, like this Stifle deck, is so synergistic and so like it needs the pieces to align. And I'm not saying that it's that hard to do. Like sometimes they just align. But the thing is, our payoff doesn't necessarily win the game. Like even if we get the Dreadnought in, it's like we can just draw 8 cards off in Atraxa and just like and have 2 win conditions. Now we have the Atraxa you have to deal with on top of the fact that I now have a group full of cards to go again with an Archon, right? Forced to protect it now.
I usually would go like this. Their not draw beats your not draw, and that is not unacceptable, but it's still, a disadvantage. So we have to make up for that. And that's oftentimes going to be the case where, I get to do my thing, you get to do your thing, and then a certain deck will be favored in that exchange because one goes over the top or whatever the case may be. So we have to compensate for that in how the games play out, how we build our deck, how we go about things. So it's not like the end of the world. It's just something to keep an eye out for. That if you make a Dreadnought with force backup, what they can do is better if they have a free path to that.
Yeah. No, I agree. Do you want to spend some time talking about some changes that you'd like to see in the list?
But I would much rather, throw some topics up that you then think about, because at the end of the day, you're the Dreadnought specialist. So I can only say like general things that I'm concerned about. So maybe that'll work. So you have talked a lot about how Ancient Tomb and then getting to play, having colorless mana usage is awesome. And that is, of course, true. It's mainly just to say that if you evoke Null Drifter, sack clues, cast Stock Up, those cards are not progressing the board, so there's a limit to how many times you can tap that Ancient Tomb. So it's mainly just to say that you need to close... When you play Ancient Tomb, you need to win the game in... Then you're not a grindy deck, let me put it that way. Then you need to put the game away, so there's some expiration date to using it over and over. That is important to think about. So we can't just grind away with that card. We actually need to. But that's, card like Stock Up is very good at finding the A plus B. So I'm not too worried about that. It's just that it's not free.
I will say this. I have with this deck won many games by plowing my own Dreadnought.
Sick.
Against like Delver and stuff. Just to save myself.
Perfect.
It actually comes up a lot more often than you think.
Now that you mentioned, I can definitely see it. The fact that you have so many resources, so staying alive, making it's a bad play 0 for 2, but the life points are crucial and you're already ahead on cards at that point, so I like that a lot.
I was playing against Storm. I was down to 12. I was like 11 or something, and it was only Storm 5 to kill me or something. So I guess I was at 10.
Right.
I was like at 11. Yeah, Storm 5 to kill me with the potential 12. And I had the Dreadnought out, and I was like, okay, I'll plow my own Dreadnought, go up 12, and they had to vomit their hand to do the storm. So I was just like, all right, I win. I have 5 cards in hand, you have none, and I'm at.
That's funny.
I'm back at 11. Good luck.
Yeah, that's definitely awesome, and a play you have up in your sleeve as the most natural thing ever because you have so much experience with the archetype. So love to see that.
Yeah, that play comes up a lot.
Yeah, that's sick.
Um,
So there's a little bit of like the boots is a weird one. I feel like so some people would I don't really use that term, but some people would categorize that card as a win more. Because then if you're going for the boots, that means you already have access to a dreadnought. In which case you're probably doing fine. So it's more like, what's the timing on that card? When we saga up that card or natural draw it, and we succeed cheating a dreadnought into play, it's mainly that it's not helping, neither providing the dreadnought nor protecting it. So it's like strictly a racing card, and I think I have a problem with that because that looks very niche to me.
the Slavisper boots are there because there's a lot of times where, like, let's say I even have a dreadnought or the combo in hand, being able to get haste can definitely be life or death. But also it comes up a lot where just being able to like play a Tameo and the turn you play it, being able to get your clue token is pretty relevant. I'm not like married to the idea of Slavisper boots. I've just high rolled with it a lot, and so I have like strong emotional attachment to it. But at the same time, I can definitely start recounting times where I like drew to my opening hand and the rest of my hand was good, so I didn't want to mulligan, and then it just sits as a brick. Like I basically mulliganed. Like I never got a creature down. It was never really super relevant, and I effectively took a mulligan to 6, even though the rest of the hand was good because I kept a hand.
Yeah, the individual card quality of that card is like really low, and then I'm just questioning how often the upside scenarios are worth it. Because attacking with a Tameo a turn early is, then you pay 1 to equip, then it's you getting to draw an additional card for 3 mana. That's not an insane payoff.
Yeah.
So we are looking at hasty Null Drifters and Dreadnoughts to justify that card.
Yeah.
Mainly, that's the 2 big ones, right? So I want to.
Even Null Drifter's not that good because by the time I'm putting a Null Drifter in play and I'm swinging with it and I have enough mana to equip it too, the game has progressed enough where my opponent can just sack a land.
Yeah, it's not backbreaking.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for sure.
Because unless you can do it like turn 1, which can, I don't even think it's possible to swing with a Null Drifter turn 1.
No.
With this deck.
Also, we don't run any like artifact stuff like Thoughtcast Opal, so we can't even say, oh yeah, it's just a trinket that can do this. Like it lost a lot of but I think you didn't play it in the old one. You might have played the Shadow Spear in that one.
I played Shadow Spear now because I was taking way too much damage to my own Ancient Tombs.
Yeah. So yeah, I would definitely think about that slot, whether that's too cute is probably some vocabulary people would call that slot. Win more, stuff like that.
Yeah, and the thing is,
I really like stock ups
because the constructs aren't really big enough where it's super, like in Saga Storm, in Casino Storm as we call it, it's really good. It's like really good in that deck. That's because you're running 4 artifact lands, and if you have like Mox Opal, Chrome Mox, you fetch a lot of boots, you have an artifact land.
So it helps with Metalcraft.
Yeah,
it's an actual plan B of the deck to play 4 Ursa Saga, and you have to maybe race a combo mirror or a control deck before they find the right card. Post sideboard, things get like a bit more. They have a pile of force negations, and you can win that way.
Exactly, that happens a lot actually. With
and then I feel like the circumstances make more sense.
Also,
here, I'm not big on that slot. I think it's.
I think I agree.
Better to have a solid magic card in that slot.
I think I agree.
In regards to the Stifle, I'm gonna leave that to the expert, like your Thrall Orb, Dress Down combination. It looks like. I agree. Also, what you said initially about the Curies, and it's funny that the biggest reason why I agree is that you already painted the picture why it was so good in the other deck, and then I just realized this is just like I realized with the mono blue deck that I tweaked. I put 2 Curious in the deck, but they were really unimpressive, mainly because I can't clear with any removal out of the mono blue deck. You can here, so it's of course better. But then just my ability to play an important creature turn 1 and 2 and like exhaust their removal is just at a way lower level than at the deck you talked about. So at the end of the day, it's probably just going to be an unreliable way to cheat a Dreadnought and not work very often. So I really like your evaluation of that card. But aside from that, I think this is let's call it a responsible deck, where you put, your cantrips, your plows, your forces, and then you have stock up. I would like to see the 4th copy. Don't know if that's possible.
I actually think I should go down to 2 stock ups and probably just put 2 ponders in. Because stock up is a lot worse if you don't have the Ancient Tombs. There's only 2 Ancient Tombs in the deck.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So rely a little bit less on that, but still have the 2, great draw spells in there. But yeah, again, the logic of I don't want 2 in my opener, so I don't go down to. I don't want to play 3 or 4 copies, but I do want to see 1 over the course of a game. So 2 is a good number.
And if I have 2 ponders, I can also find stock up. One of the problems why I don't like ponder right now is because 1, it's too slow. 2, the amount of times where you just ponder and you find more cantrips. It's like I don't want to be pondering into ponders. That's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, there's definitely some cost to spending a mana to not impact the board. But at the same time, ponders could be anything. It could be the reason you keep your hand against a combo deck. You find the force, could put together, a part of a combo, could find your next land, let you keep 1 lander. So, I mean, ponder provides a lot of value.
So that's why I think maybe zero is kind of a testament to my hatred of that card. It's become I've kind of been known for it now. People know me as how much I think ponder is just bad. But I think
it's not perfect. It has its flaws for sure, but at the end of the day, it's consistency. You see Force of Will more often. You see Dreadnought more often. You see, you find Ancient Tomb and Ursa Saga more often. Ponder could be anything. So it kind of helps your numbers across the board.
So I think 2 ponder is where I want to be for now. I like the 1 Lorien Revealed. I just think Lorien Revealed is an insanely good Magic card, and especially if I'm on Ancient Tomb, like. The fact that I could go turn 4, draw 3 cards is pretty good, and also just being able to get Basic Island into Blood Moon is pretty relevant.
Yeah, it does a lot of things. I remember when that card came out and people started to realize that it was insane all the way from Pauper to Vintage. It was a 4-off. That was a crazy card.
The Lorien Revealed is the best card in Jewel Shops. Sorry, now it's Sink into Stupor. I lied. Now it's Sink into Stupor, but it was.
Never played that card though, because you only play 1 Basic Island in that deck. So something else maybe, Luris.
I think Jewel Shops runs 4 Sink into Stupor, right? That's the best card in Jewel Shops now.
Yeah, for sure. That is blue count, answer, blue mana. Yeah, it's crazy.
So obviously the Brainstorm 4 plows, that's all makes sense. I have the 1 Prismatic Ending just because I think it's fine. It acts as another removal spell. It's an answer to just random bullshit.
I like that as well. It's like the breakfast formula where you have those, solid normal Magic cards, and then you do your thing with the rest of the deck.
Yeah. The one thing that I'm struggling with Prismatic Ending is one of the big things that I want to hit is Ensnaring Bridge out of all the Karn decks. Now, it doesn't come up super often, but I also don't want to be in a situation where I'm stone cold dead to Ensnaring Bridge, because I've literally... So I have Sink into Stupor as my bridge, and I also have and technically I have Lotus Petal to get to a 3rd color with Prismatic Ending, which it actually does come up, because I was playing against Painter once, so we were basically they had a bridge out. And that was it. But I was able to tick up a Tameo all the way, and I'd already played my Sink into Stupor as a land. But I was able to tick up Tameo all the way, draw half my deck, and then I was able to do the thing. So
that's beautiful. When you can build in these emergency plans without giving up a lot, then I like it.
Yeah,
it's basically the difference between something getting a bit too obscure and it costs something, basically like the priest. I feel like the reason is there, but we're giving up too much,
Yeah.
and that's just a good thing to realize, that every choice you make in Magic means that you neglected something else, right? Nothing is free in Magic, so we need to look for as closest to the free roll as possible, but just realize that it's not possible.
Is that why Catastrophe Probe was banned? Because it was the only card that was truly free?
Well, yeah, probably the closest thing to it, and way too much upside between, you
Yeah.
know, delve, prowess creatures, blue count, etc. Like ton of things combined. But yeah, that was incredible.
It was
But
truly
yeah,
free. That card, there was no reason not to run that card in your deck if you were blue, because even in the late game, if 2 health matters, you can just cast it for 1 mana.
yeah, and
anyway.
even in modern Death Shadow, and when you start to talk about the synergy, you played Infect and got information on when to go all in, and yeah, too much out of that card.
But anyway, so I made a few changes, right? I took out the Containment Priest, I took out 1 Blue Glass, I took out the Soul, the what's it called, the boots, and I took out 1 Stock Up, and I don't even remember the other card I took out. Oh, and I took out 1 Curie, and I added 2 Ponders to the main deck, so that I'm still missing 1 card from the main and more sideboard cards. I know you talked about the consigns and how 4 is probably too many, but I think 4 consigns is good only because I am still a Dreadnought deck in the end of the day, and I can always make use of consign outside.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Like I can
you
still
can you can add a dress down in the main deck pretty confidently, I feel like.
I agree.
Especially because Curie is somewhat of a B piece to Dreadnought.
Yeah.
So it's just good to keep the ratio.
I think Doorkeeper Throw also has a place if more ETP decks are good, but that's one thing where I look at the MTG Goldfish a lot. The link that you posted, like which decks is Curie good against? Against Reanimator, it's like, yeah, I would say I rate it on like 1 to 5, right? I do this with Doorkeeper Throw a lot. I think against Dimir Reanimator, it's a 4 out of 5 because their fair playing is so bad. So it's just good. Against Red Stompy, I would call it a 3 out of 5. I would call it a 2 out of 5, actually. Doorkeeper Thrall is good because it can stop Pyroglyph, but at the end of the day, I'm never dying to Pyroglyph out of that deck. The thing that kills me out of that deck is Broadside and Lock Pieces, so put it a 2 out of 5. Eldrazi, 2 out of 5 if I can flash it in response to a Seer. It's really good.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's only good against that card, right?
Against Oops, 5 out of 5. Against Painter, 3 out of 5. Because being able to stop Engineer and Dragon Engine and the other thing is so good. But the thing is, it's also really easy for them to just ignore a Doorkeeper Thrall.
Yeah.
So that's why I put 3 out of 5.
Painter's pivot plan is always like, you don't know if you're up against like a heavy combo Welder draw or it's like Saga and Fables and Furies.
Yeah. And then Dimir Tempo, 1 out of 5. Esper Control, 1 out of 5. Only because sometimes you can get lucky and kill a Bowmaster, but that's it. That's why I'm not making it a 0. Against Doomsday, 5 out of 5. Against Lands, 0 out of 5. Against Delvers, 0 out of 5. And then Omnitel, 0 out of 5. Mono Black Reanimator, like 3 out of 4 out of 5. Stifle Knot, 0 out of 5 in the mirror. Sneak and Show.
Definitely.
Sneak and Show, again, like, not that great. If they're going for the omniscient. It can be actually very good against Sneak and Show, so maybe I'll make that like a 3 out of 5. Omnitel, 0 out of 5. Sneak and Show, probably 3 or 4 out of 5. And then Is It Delver, 0 out of 5. So, if we add that up, it's just not that good right now.
It's, no, it depends on your focus here, but I will say it's a bit concerning that it's a bad card against like all the Daze decks.
Yeah.
But that again comes down to priorities. Could get a lot of players across the board, various matchups. You already mentioned a lot of them. So yeah, it's just very tough. I never liked it mainly because it's a bad card. I just as a player I really love the individual, usage of a card. But of course it's its effect on the metagame is important in that evaluation. So I think it's good that you make that kind of ranking. Then of course we can discuss each number and
Yeah.
and try and go into detail. But in general, it's good to think about it, because some people would just think about it as it's a 1/2 that enables double dreadnought. Let's go, and I can stop. My local store has a Doomsday player. Let's go. Like it. So it's just that it's just good to have 1,000 reasons on the board instead of 5 reasons on the board. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely not worried about that one. You're definitely the man when it comes to picking the right stifle cards.
The and Dress Down is insane against Breakfast, like absolutely bonkers insane against Breakfast. So I am surprised Breakfast isn't on here, because in paper it's everywhere. I won a win a sheet, which is actually worth like $2,000 apparently. I have a foil mythic Bloomberg sheet. I was playing on my bug trade binder deck.
Yeah, I remember you told me a few weeks ago. Yeah,
I
that's
played
great.
against Breakfast 3 times. And then
Wow.
3 times.
But that it's funny because it won the last showcase on Magic Online,
and it won a
and
turn
then
weekend.
it
And
also
nothing
won a
got
turn
played.
weekend, and it was the same player.
Yeah, well, yeah, Larson, but he's kind of saying Breakfast is good because Larson won on it is kind of a moot point, because Larson,
Exactly.
it's like the dude is just the god of that deck. Like,
Yeah, very impressed, and but that's why it's important to keep tabs on results, because if a deck wins a tournament, more people are going to play it in the next 1 or 2 weeks, and then it's going to fizzle out. Like I've seen this 100 times, so it makes a lot of sense that the timing of him winning that tournament and you winning that tournament were just like a week or 2 apart. So I mean, the story checks out to me.
it's I'm always happy when I play against Breakfast on Stifle Not. We'll just say that, especially because it can feel so free sometimes. Nadu makes it a lot worse, but if you just keep in mind that you just need to make sure Nadu never hits the board and Teferi never hits the board, you pretty much win that matchup every time. You just have to make sure that those 2 cards ever resolve. But
yeah, it's interesting when you know a matchup so well that you know exactly what can and cannot happen.
yeah,
That's just you playing with a lot of confidence based on your experience, and that's pretty cool. You want to get to that exact same confidence level when you're looking across the metagame and you're building your deck and tweaking week to week. Then you want to reach the same how you just described that, like that confidence, and you know what's going on and you know what you need to stop from happening. That's exactly where you want to be with a deck. That should be the goal, because then you're feeling at home and then you can do your best.
I know we're like half an hour over, so I want to be conscious of your time.
Yeah, it's all good. We can wrap up now. I had a lot of fun here.
Let's have a goal for next week. I don't think I'm going to be able to play in the showcase the more I think about it.
Okay.
Just because it's going to take the whole day for me on Sunday, and that's a non-starter in my household to take the whole day to play Magic on a weekend.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable.
But I will do this though. I'll try it. I'm going to play this deck a lot over the next week. In between Monster Hunter, and I'm going to come back with an updated list on Monday, and we can talk about some of the changes and some of the logic if that works for you, and then maybe we can do some VOD review too.
Yeah,
of the games.
I think that's awesome. We already talked a little bit about whether that makes sense, but I also agree with you. We need some quality footage for that to be as effective as possible. So let's continue down the path of this deck, staying true to the metagame, staying true to how you play the game and how you your experience kind of can help you within the strategy. And then let's maybe have a little bit of a footnote when it comes to the results of the showcase and what you can do in order to adapt to the new trends.
And actually, what I think I'll do is I'll hit up some friends of mine that I know are very good, to players that do very well in challenges. So I'm sure if I hit up Joyful Waffle, who top eights like a ton of challenges on Delta, like, hey, will you play like 2 best of 3s against me? I'm sure he'll say yes. And
Yeah,
I do the same for like a ton of other decks, just because, as you said, like, how good is my Magic network? And I would say my Magic network is like very, very strong.
Yeah, we need to take advantage of that for sure. And getting in good matches against non-random decks is also quite valuable. So great idea. And let's get into some VOD reviewing. I've been told that I'm the replay shaman, so Let's
I'm excited.
let's
All
see
right.
let's see if I can deliver a week from now.
Let's do it. All right, Andreas. Let me go on your face. Perfect. I think that's it. I think you have a whole day ahead of you, and I have a whole sleep ahead of me.
Yeah, perfect.
So I will.
Can't be any better. Starting my day off strong here.
Well, I hope you get to enjoy the rest of your coffee, and I'm excited to have my coffee when I wake up.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much, Everin.
All right, Andreas. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good rest of your day.
Yes,
and
sir.
We'll be in touch.
See you next week.
Perfect.